Hi, hi. Welcome all to another edition of the Code Remix Weekly. We're your hosts. My name is Tim Twick, and with me here is Sam Stein.
Good to be here. I like our new spooky countdown. That's fun.
Uh-huh. I think it's gonna last for yet another week, and after
Probably
that,
at
we'll
least one more
at
week,
least,
and then
yeah,
the
you'd think
conventional
so.
spooky season might be over.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, but yeah, good to have you with us because there's been quite some updates over the past week, and as always, we're going to take you through a bit of those, and then we're going to dive deeper into the topic for this week, which is to kill your zombie code. So we have a number of items on that theme, and we'll take you through about halfway through. So with that, I'm going to share a couple of slides very quickly. And I want to show you this one first, which is to indicate that we did a new release now, which should come as no surprise to folks that have been following the show because we do a new release every 2 weeks. We like to move fast, and there's always enough to cover. So this way, everything gets rolled up into a single release that is very easy to consume. And all you have to do is open the link to go to the rewrite recipe bill of materials to get all the online versions of Open Rewrite and the Maven and Gradle plugins, as well as all the recipe modules that go into the rewrite recipe bill of materials. Now, some of the things that are new in the past week is that, or the past 2 weeks, is that we have added a cursor verification. Sam knows a bit more about that, and it's been troublesome downstream, I can tell you that. But we managed to make it work. Could you explain a bit, Bill, for the folks who might now get the privilege of getting to discover all the various ways in which they were not using the cursor correctly?
Yeah. So the cursor keeps track of your position within an LST while you were visiting it. So if you've ever been visiting an element within the cursor, a method declaration, for example, and wanted to ask a question like, "What class declaration am I contained within?" Then the cursor is the data structure which provides you access to the parents of the element you're visiting, and therefore also to the siblings, so that you can ask and answer questions in your recipe that are about relationships between elements that are not in or under the element you are currently visiting. So very useful feature. Lots of recipes use it, uh, but because the guts of the visitor pattern are kind of exposed to you while you override a visitor, you have access to use and occasionally misuse some of the infrastructure of visiting, like cursoring. And one common mistake that can be made when passing around cursors is to accidentally pass around, into a function which accepts a cursor, either a cursor pointing to the current element when it's expecting a cursor pointing to the parent of the current element, or sometimes vice versa. But one situation that is always indicative of confusion is if you have a cursor that says an element is its own parent. And this is very easy to do by accident, and well, just doesn't make any sense, right? LSTs are not cyclic data structures except in the type attribution metadata, but we're talking purely about the structural elements that get rendered into the document at the moment. And since they are, which is another way of saying the documents are finite, right? Your Java source file is not recursive. You cannot keep expanding a method declaration and find that it contains itself forever in an infinity mirror kind of situation. So I added a check to just the test framework to look for uh, when a cursor is set up such that an element is listed as being its own parent, which can only happen, in real life in a Back to the Future time travel paradox sort of situation, right? So yeah, if you see errors around, an element not being able to be, its own parent when you're running your tests, typically the thing to do is to replace a call to get cursor with a call to get cursor, get parent. uh, but yeah, the error message hopefully explains. So if you get stuck on that, you know let us know in the Open Rewrite community Slack, if you need help with that.
Yeah. And of course, we realize that not everyone is going to be updating every 2 weeks, so it might trickle in over the next couple of months. So if you see someone ask this question a little down the line, be sure to point them maybe to this video or help guide them to using that dot parent dot get parent on the same cursor, because those methods that accept the parent cursor, they were pretty explicit about it in naming the argument, but of course not everyone got that memo and now we're going to be validating on that more strictly. So yep, should be good. And I've also seen this in particular when maybe auto format is being used. So that's another case where you might want to be mindful of this new validation. You should be stumbling across this if you do your unit tests, as you should, because it's only for the unit test framework a check right now.
Yeah, when there are several situations where you can get away with the cursor being wrong and it kind of just works out all right. So we didn't want to make recipes that would work fail, but it's also one of those things where, like, if you have the cursoring wrong, your recipe might work right in all the situations that you've tried it in so far, and there might be a case that you haven't run into yet where that being wrong could really make the difference. So trying to strike a balance between providing helpful early, notification that maybe your recipe has a bug, with not causing undue headache with failing the recipe at actual runtime.
And of course, as previously with some of these test framework validations, if you find that you can't deal with this right now, there's always the option to disable these types of checks. So know that escape hatch is there, but try to really fix your recipe, because really it's there for a reason. So that's good. Then we have another couple fixes. So one is that we now have more cases where we're going to validate that the same recipe that already was avoiding your nullable string comparisons now also works for additional string comparisons, like content equals and two other cases will now be picked up by the same recipe. So it might make sense to run the same recipe, which is part of that common static analysis issues recipe, and see additional fixes throughout your code base to help prevent those null pointer exceptions. And similarly, we've repurposed a existing recipe that already phased out immutable guava collections to now also handle cases where there is an assignment to maybe that same immutable guava collection type. So if you have immutable set, immutable map, or immutable list on the left-hand side of an assignment, we will now update those types to maps, lists, and sets as well. All through a very helpful community contribution, which is just, I was just amazed opening it up in the code, seeing the code quality and seeing the additional case covered, which is just a joy when you come back to work after a couple of days away, to be able to now cover those additional cases too. Some smaller things, we're also now, if you're upgrading from an older version of Hibernate still as part of your Spring Boot upgrades, we will also correctly convert your temporal types. And we added the recipes to upgrade your Android Gradle plugin, such that it gets aligned with the version of the Android SDK and aligned with the version of your Gradle wrapper. So anytime you need to get these three in sync as you upgrade to newer versions of the Android SDK, then the recipes will help you there, which is going to be a great help for any libraries that you might have for Android projects, now that we have support to build those too. And then as always, we're going to be uncovering new CVEs through our familiar find and fix vulnerable dependencies recipes, and a lot more smaller fixes that went into this large release. And with that, I think we've covered most of the notable changes. And of course, there's many, many more if you go dive into the details over each of these releases. And you'll also be able to see who all contributed to these fixes. So we've had some friends of ours that have been new to contributing to Open Rewrite. And all of their changes are going to be made in here as well, or called out here as well. So if you want to be on this list, then please send us some pull requests. We'll get you notified here too. So that's it for the new release. And then, as has been typical, I'll be out for tomorrow. I'll Like last week, I had a lot of fun joining the Java Oslo Java user group. I got this perfect little Viking Java Duke, which is now sitting in the
Nice.
background of
Wait,
my
hold on. Let's make
video
you
games.
bigger so you can show it off to everyone.
It's my joy. It's like
It,
it has a little
it's
Viking helmet, a big red nose,
it's
and
such a cute little guy.
uh, so
For being a conquering Viking invader, that is.
that is, yeah. But the Java kind, so he must be friendly, I imagine.
Must be.
Yeah.
At least he cleans up his garbage after himself, right? He doesn't just
No.
leave allocated memory hanging around.
Doesn't pillage the village and then set it fire and leave some trash lingering. No, no, no.
Picks up the trash after burning the village down.
So tomorrow, I'm hoping, of course, for a Java Juke which has some French fries or maybe some waffles. I think because I'll be joining the Belgium Java user group near Brussels, where I'll be giving a presentation on Open Rewrite a la carte, where you can folks can chime in what they would like to see, and then from there we'll have a bit of more interactive session on all things
Nice.
Open Rewrite. So should be good fun. And then next week, our Justine will be doing some of the same in Montreal, I think. Does it say where exactly? We have to click on the map, don't we? It's going to be, yeah, Montreal. So she'll be talking about resurrecting legacy systems with Open Rewrite. It's not entirely clear to me if this is going to be in French or in English, but she does both very well, and we know that. So if you're in the neighborhood, be sure to check it out, and then you'll be able to learn all about using Open Rewrite to modernize your code. Then the week after that, I'll be at JFall. So if you go to the speakers for 2024 and you look for my name, then you'll see that I am doing 2 sessions at least, where there's first a workshop on the day before, and then a new session on the day itself on how we are using generative AI across millions of lines of code. So really showing off the work that Justine has done, but now showing that off close to her. So if you're in the neighborhood, do check it out. And otherwise, yeah, I'm nearby anyway. So do reach out, and we'll get you filled in there. So also new in the past week is that we published 2 new videos. One of them on dependency insights for Gradle and Maven as a separate recipe. I think Sam, you voiced this one and the next one as well.
Yes, I did record these. It, yeah, they turned out well. I think probably will not be too surprising to regular viewers of this program. But if you haven't, or if you have anyone who you were trying to quickly bring up to speed with some of what recipes or Open Rewrite can offer, could be a good starting point to share one of these recent clips. Are only a few minutes long, and I think, obviously biased, do a good job of presenting some of our best use cases in action.
Absolutely. So it's a really helpful short summary of what one particular recipe can do, such that you can send that off and explain that this is how you'd like to solve your problems.
Oh.
So that's it in terms of upgrades for the past week on things that are already done. And we have one very promising work in progress that Sam can fill you in on.
Yeah. So it has been a long desired and long requested feature of Open Rewrite that we properly support the Lombok annotation processor, very popular in the Java ecosystem, and something that we extensively use ourselves. Unfortunately, Open Rewrite has, at least so far, not been able to support Lombok. You see that issue was opened back in 2021, but because we ourselves use Lombok, we knew it didn't work right from the beginning of the project. And by didn't work, what I mean is that when you would currently, because the support isn't released yet, would use Open Rewrite on a Lombokified code base, you would not get type attribution for any symbols that Lombok was going to produce, since Lombok effectively does code generation based on the annotations that you have throughout your code. And internally, the way the Open Rewrite Java parser works is that we call the real Java compiler and ask it to parse and type attribute your code, but we weren't configuring any annotation processors with that, so it wouldn't have any of the generated methods from Lombok, when you were parsing those sources. So those methods would end up missing type attribution, which, for most things kind of works out mostly okay. But there are circumstances where, like, if the thing you want to modify is being passed into like a Lombok getter or setter, not Java not being able to type attribute the Lombok generated method that your thing is an argument to, might make it confused about what about the type of the argument as well as the method it was going into. And so what I think we have here is I got tired of this situation. It was causing, it's just a long standing pain point. And I decided earlier this week to take a crack at one of the more promising, I thought, approaches to potentially implementing Lombok support. Part of why we hadn't done it sooner was we didn't think we had a clear way to achieve Lombok support without doing something difficult. We had several bad ideas about how to support Lombok, let's say, but I finally decided to try out one of our good ideas, or what turned out to be one of our good ideas, which is essentially just configure the Java parser to do Lombok annotation processing, generate all the code, which then complicates the phase where we take the Java compiler internal AST and map it onto the Open Rewrite LST. Because now the AST doesn't match the source code anymore. So the trick is just to filter out all of the Lombok generated elements when we map the AST into the LST. So a little bit of a balancing act, but for the most part, it hasn't been too bad because Lombok helpfully generates an annotation on most of the methods that it produces, or most of the classes it produces. Although I am now running into a case that I haven't figured out how to handle yet, but hopefully will later today after the stream is over, where Lombok's sneaky throws annotation can generate try-catch blocks. And, if there's already a try-catch block, the try might be in source, or if there isn't already a try-catch block, neither the try nor the catch may appear in source code. And because those are statements, they can't have annotations on them. So I can't just look for like a Lombok generated annotation on a try keyword, because that's not a thing you can do in Java. So I have to do some more fiddly nonsense to parse it all out. But the upside is that very soon Open Rewrite should work better on Open Rewrite's own code base, as well as all of the other code bases out there that use Lombok. And I'm pretty confident this will work, so that's why I'm kind of sharing it now, even before it's quite done, as I know there are many people out there who have for years been anticipating this. So I'm gratified, but not entirely satisfied, to be able to say that we will have it very soon. Trademark. So look forward to Lombok support. We'll probably do like a full episode on how that works at some point, as we are ever in need of topics to discuss on Code Remix Weekly. So Tim, it is now the spooky season, at least here in the United States. I understand that Halloween is not a big thing in the Netherlands, but I am curious, do you have like a favorite monster or creature? You are here now, a cultural ambassador from the Netherlands to the rest of the world. So, is there perhaps a creature from local lore or mythology that you think the rest of the world should know about? Are there any Netherlands-specific cryptids out there? Like, do you have a Yeti or a Loch Ness monster or anything?
So when I grew up in the eastern part of the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And over there we had a concept, but I think it's only in the villages near where I grew up.
Oh,
And it's
really
called
local. Excellent.
And it's called the Witte Wieve, which means the white witches.
Ooh.
And they would be flying through the forests at night. And
Yeah.
once a year, they would be walk through those woods, and there'd be folks in customs throwing things on ropes through the woods and everything. And it'd be, of course, as a kid, you're quite impressionable, and it's going to be interesting
Yeah,
and
yeah.
memorable, such an evening.
All right,
But
the White Witches. Now, is this myth of the White Witches? Is this one that's like used to like scare children into like don't go into the forest alone? The White Witches will get you, kind of thing. Are the White Witches dangerous or benevolent or kind of like okay if you don't piss them off?
I think they're dangerous. If there were any kind of like moral learnings attached to it, they
Uh
didn't
huh.
stick. So I can't give you any details there.
Well, you didn't go. You didn't wander off into the forest and get eaten by a witch. So maybe the myth
No,
did its job. But that's
no.
cool. The
So,
White Witches. Yeah, also to try and look that one up. I think
mhm.
I've always thought that witches are particularly cool. That they are, you know, able to, through secret knowledge, exist often in contexts or societies that fear and despise them. And I always admired that
Mm-hmm.
fierce independence through eldritch knowledge. And
Yep.
that being a software engineer is not very much like that, but I can pretend.
All good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, on to kind of the topic of monsters and killing your zombie code. We thought that the for the rest of our time we would kind of talk about scenarios where code becomes a burden and ways that recipes and other open rewrite related stuff can be used to alleviate the burden that code places on you. And it's something that sometimes when we talk to people, they're kind of like offended by the idea of open rewrite or automated changes. Like, oh, you're saying my code is bad. Like you're saying that you need to come in and fix it. That I'm like a bad engineer and I've done wrong things. Well, screw you. I'm a smart, good engineer. My code is great. I don't want your automated assistance. And I'm like, that's totally not the intention, because it's like even if you do everything right, you end up with problems, right? Like code is burdensome, right? Every line of code potentially has bugs, potentially has security vulnerabilities. Every single test is taking time to execute and time to
Yeah.
analyze when there's a failure or not. So like even if you do everything right, like set aside any notion of pride or like moral injury from the concept of automation. If you do everything right, you end up with problems just because you succeeded, because you built a business or have a product that works. Now you have the burden of supporting it and maintaining it and keeping it going into the future. So we thought that we would share some things for trying to help with that, as helping with that as kind of open rewrite's mission as a whole. So I've got a couple little ones. I know Tim has a few. Tim, do you want to go first, or shall I? I know you put together a
Um,
recipe or two.
yeah, sure. I can give a bit of a demo of what I pulled together. Now, of
Excellent.
course, the most fun I've had in software development, I think, is the moment you can really press delete across a
Oh,
big
that is
project or across a
gratifying.
lot of projects. So
Yeah.
what I did is I figured let's make it a little explicit to get that feeling of some things that we know are probably safe to do and have a high chance of having hits across the projects that you might be looking at. And of course, favorite tool for this type of work is, of course, the modern platform. No surprise there, I imagine. Uh, but what I've done is I have composed a recipe, which includes a number of steps from all the various recipes that we support. And what I've done is I've named it the Kill Your Zombie Code recipe. And it looks kind of nefarious with
It
all the
looks like
little
a
like,
zombie virus now that you mention it. When you're in the sci-fi movie and there's a news report in the background foreshadowing the zombie outbreak, like scientists in Indonesia discovered a molecule, or a fungus with a unique
mhm.
structure that's really going to mess up your brain, and it looks just like this. But that's a trick, because this is going to help with the zombie infection,
No,
not spread it.
yeah, it's seldom a helpful moment when you see this type of diagram, but what we can do is you can see on the right hand side that we've composed together a lot of the recipes that we have to remove unused private fields and unused local variables, methods, imports, any empty tests that don't contain any comments are probably good to be removed as well. And that list goes on and on and on. And then the neat thing here is that all of these have been tested in isolation and have been run very much over the past years and years that folks have been using these. But we've never offered folks like a composite one thing that would only remove code. And so for today, that's going to change. We have this run recipe, and I'm not sure if we'll stick with the kill your zombie code naming of it, but you can run it, and I'll run it in this case against an organization. Let's see which one I had selected. It's the Apache org. And that, of course, will show this recipe at a very large scale. And very quickly, you will see that we start to delete code left and right across the Apache GitHub organization. And in parallel, I also kind of want to run it against the OpenRewrite org, because that is one where I can actually make some changes. So let me get back and change the organization briefly. I'll open it in parallel here. Organization, OpenRewrite. And let's run it again. So here again, we have it running against the Apache org, and let's have a look at one of these projects here, Apache Mina Visper. And here you can see that not much is changing, but in reality, we're clearing out this line where there is indentation or with new lines, which is maybe the standard on this particular project, but I know that it's being changed because we can go to that why that is changed. And it says exactly, well, kill your zombie code includes the remove trailing whitespace recipe. Which, if you've come to learn how the platform works, you know this kind of things intuitively. But over here, you can also see that we are clearing out any intermediate variables, which are immediately returned, which is another case where you can easily clear out a single line just because it's really not doing much of anything. And there's a lot of such examples throughout this code. So here you can see that we are removing some imports, which are not used. And if you ever want to see a wider context, you can of course click on the blue line on the left-hand side and see that indeed this offline stance receiver isn't used at all beyond this one particular line for an import. So then maybe it's good to remove here. It's just the type of cleanup operations that are just safe and proven and work very well. And now you're able to run them at scale. And then of course, create a pull request for this particular project through a fork on your own project, if you feel strongly about changing these things in this particular project. But of course, I don't have write access across the Apache org, but I can show you what this looks like if you look at the summary here, where you can see that we've so far ran against 1100 of the 1200 repositories in the Apache GitHub org, and we've had success across 600 of those. We've searched across close to 400,000 files, and we've changed some 40,000 files. So all in all, removing quite some lines across a lot of files just by composing a recipe really quickly, kind of like in a toy-like way, be able to clear out unused code. I see Kevin is chiming in.
Is commenting on the ambulance that you had scheduled to run in the background to provide ambiance and theming for it. Yeah, that was very clever of you from a webcast perspective. But the person you grievously injured so that an ambulance would be called probably doesn't appreciate it as much.
Yeah, I live 2 blocks away from a hospital. This is I don't even hear them anymore.
You don't even hear it anymore. Just tune it out.
It's like every hour or so, I think something. So yeah, that's that recipe. And then we also ran it against the OpenRewrite org. And of course, here we can see similar changes. And what I want to be doing here is we're unnecessarily throwing an exception here and another one here. All of these can be cleared out, especially in tests. And what I want to do is just create a commit. Now I'll make exceptions here for 2 in particular, because I know here we have some tests in the or some Java files recognized from the tests folders. So I don't want those in particular, and I don't want them for the C# project as well, because I think that's an odd case. There's some imports being changed. But the others, I feel very confident in just pushing this up to a commit.
Yeah, let's give it
I,
a go. And if it messes anything up, well, that just means we need to fix up the recipe.
and then the question is, are we confident enough to do this directly onto main, or would you want to
Go
start a pull
for it.
request? Go for it. It's,
we can always revert it if it breaks
oh.
something.
And we're gonna stick to the kill your zombie code.
Yeah,
That'll be
yeah,
fun,
that'll be
right?
fun.
So yeah, so here you can see how we're clearing out all these issues across these 16 repositories, just by composing a recipe, running it quickly, previewing some of the results, and then trusting that the items work very well. And of course,
Trusting
we'll
and then verifying via CI and what have you that it was correct.
I think
Alrighty.
we're also going to be pulling in the CI status at some point, unless we
Oh yeah,
only do
that
that
would
for
be
pull
cool.
requests, and
That
then
would be cool.
we should be able to monitor the progress here. This is just
Yeah.
a quick demo, pulling up just exactly how we're fixing things across projects. In this case, Jenkins clearing out some white space just to reduce that noise. So
Yeah, and
pretty
I
neat,
think
I'd say.
this points to something important that is important about recipes, which is about their composability. The degree to which you could grab a recipe off the shelf and put another recipe alongside it, and now you have a new recipe that does two things, and that the sum of many small recipes can be an impressive or useful result.
Absolutely, and it also underwrites why we very strongly emphasize that recipes should compose very well, because you never know what the next one is going to be. It might be in a different composite, and you just want to be sure that the type system works and all of it just
Absolutely,
composes well.
absolutely. Well, good
So yeah,
stuff, Tim. So I also have a recipe to show, and this is maybe a bit more of a work in progress. It's something that we've another issue that we've long had requests for, and that fits very nicely with the theme of killing your zombie code is killing your zombie dependencies. Every dependency you have, could potentially have security vulnerabilities showing up on a scanner, or be bloating the fat jar or images that you're distributing to your customers or to your production environments. And it has every excess dependency has a cost, even if maybe the individual cost is not high. We have often gotten the request, and indeed wanted ourselves, a recipe for removing unused dependencies. And for a long time, we were blocked from implementing that because while we would record the full class path in terms of like all the types that were available into the Java source set marker on the LST, we did not record the the GAV coordinate, the group artifact version coordinate of the jar that provided the type. And so without that mapping, we couldn't tell which jars were providing, even though we knew all the types on the class path and we knew all the types in the LST and we knew all of the dependencies that were being requested. There was just that one missing link, which made it hard to figure out which dependencies provided which type, and therefore which dependencies provided types that aren't actually being used in the code anywhere. And so now, finally, I have taken, at this point, it's just a first draft on removing unused dependencies. But I've already, pushed the branch. It's going to be in rewrite Java dependencies, and if you want to check it out, you can look at this remove unused branch. But I'm hoping, later today or this week, I can continue to get this polished up and committed. But even then, it'll probably be in kind of an alpha status for a while, because there are a lot of edge cases for what could lead code to be considered used, particularly when things like reflection are in play, as they often are in many popular Java frameworks. So this one will, I expect it to be kind of a long tail of issues on this guy, but the basic concept, is working, at least for Maven, right now. In this draft form, where in this test case, for example, we start with the Maven POM that lists Guava in it, and one Java source file in this project that does not use Guava anywhere, and the recipe can successfully identify that and remove the unused dependency. And so in the implementation,
oh, We lost Sam for a bit, I think. Usually he's back fairly quickly. So we're gonna wait for that while I open much of
It
the same over here.
disappeared for a moment. Am I back now?
Yes, you're
Am I
back.
back? Okay, cool.
Yep.
So if you have ever wanted to write a recipe that did this or did something similar to this, the key to doing so is in the Java source set marker, which is present on all code sources, and it has the newish thing. Oh, it's actually been there for a little while. That is added that didn't used to be there is this get gav to types structure, which records a string group artifact version coordinate concatenated with colons between them, much as you will see in like a Gradle string dependency notation, mapping it to a list of fully qualified names, class names provided from that dependency. And so that we can work patterns from that information in order to create a mapping of which type um, comes from which artifact, in order to compare a list of types in use to types from each artifact and remove the unused ones. So if you've ever wanted to clean out your old and unused dependencies, and who hasn't? I mean, who doesn't want to get rid of an unused dependency, right? Then look forward to this, and feel free to contribute or make me aware of edge cases as I get this merged and published and start trying it out on code. If you tried it on your code and you're like, oh, I found this library, actually via reflection or some other obtuse mechanism, indicates usage of a symbol in this way, well, then I can always go add that to the recipe then. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at on removing unused dependencies. And between removing unused dependencies and cleaning up unused code, well, speaking of cleaning up unused code, did you want to talk about feature flags, Tim?
Yeah, sure. I can talk to that for a bit.
Yeah.
It is, of course, my favorite one that I like to clear out, because it's one of the things that it's going to be, you introduce it at the moment that you're actively working on a feature, and then 3 months later you have it to do to clear it out, and then 3 years later you come across that to do again, and you think, well, should have cleared that out like a couple of years back. Now we've had these recipes for a while, but we also had some minor issues with these recipes, and I listed those as a potential for improvement almost a year ago, just after I created this initial batch of the recipes that we have here. But then, yeah, 4 days ago, we got a community member who offered to help clear out one of the to-do items that I have on this
All
particular
right, what a
list.
champion.
That's pretty good, because what we've been wanting to do here is to clear out any of the take a look at the test. Any of the variables that are unused after clearing out the feature flag. So in this case, this is the feature flag that we want to remove. We're successfully removing it, but previously we would not clear out this the now unused local variable, because this is using a builder which might have a side effect.
So does this use data flow analysis to figure out if anything uses the local variable after the change?
No, it uses the existing remove unused local variables
Very good.
Recipe, which does not use data flow analysis. But that one was quite conservative, because there might be side effects coming from a method invocation here, which meant that it thought, well, I can't be certain that this is doing something that you want to keep. So I'm going to keep that variable around. So what we've done is we've made a similar change, and I proposed it here as well, to clear out that limitation on the remove unused local variables recipe, and made it configurable. So if you pass in an additional argument, the also remove with the unused local variables with side effects, then it's going to do exactly that. And of course, we call that now within the recipe, and we say, well, removed that with the new flag set to true. And then repeat it until stable, because there might be a succession of unused local variables being used. And then clearing it out in this way ensures that all of those are cleared up, such that we were able to go back to the original issue, cross off the first item, and all of that flows back into all of our unused feature flags recipes.
Nice.
Such that, no matter if you're using FF4J, Launch Darkly, Open Feature, or Unleash, all of
Nice.
them will get these improvements. So very neat stuff, and
Yeah.
really helps clear out the zombie of unused feature flags throughout your
Yeah, I think this really illustrates how if you have a zombie problem, you don't want to go down there and put your own flesh and blood on the line fighting the zombies, right? Because you might get bitten and you might get infected and become another zombie. I think in this tortured metaphor for software development, that would be like a developer burning out, dealing with the tedious consequences of all of these mundane tasks when they'd rather be doing something more interesting. So much like a zombie hunter wants to avoid getting bitten themselves and turning into a zombie, the best way to fight zombies isn't on your own, but you want a robot army to do it for you. And so that's really what we're trying to put together here is a shiny chrome robot army to go hunt down the zombie code so that you can live in peace and happiness and not have to fight the zombies yourselves. And so if that sounds appealing to all of you would-be zombie hunting robot builders out there in the audience, help us out with these recipes. As with everything in OpenReddit, this is all open source. You can contribute to remove unused dependencies. You can contribute to the feature flags recipes. You can contribute to anything that helps migrate an old framework version to a new framework version. And one day we'll have enough and sufficiently advanced robots that we can put an end to the zombie plague once and for all. And the sun will rise on a grateful zombie-free world. We can only dream that we live to see it.
Absolutely. I can tell you read a lot more books than I probably find time for to read.
This is all sci-fi and fantasy up here on this shelf behind me.
All good, all good. So yeah, with that, I have nothing further for this week. Do you have anything that you want to bring up?
I think that's pretty good. I think we just about covered it. Be sure to join us next week when we are going to have on several other of our colleagues who are all industry veterans, and we're going to be sharing debugging horror stories from our careers, times when we have had a particularly tricky, difficult, or high impact problem or mistake that we have had a hand in causing and or resolving. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of combined industry experience on the show next week. So I think we will have a deep well of entertaining stories to draw from. So look forward to that. I am.
Absolutely. Yeah. We of course got a sneak preview at some of these stories, and not all of them can be told, but we'll find a way to get the details out to you. So should be interesting. So hope to see you next week, next Wednesday, same time as always. And then with that, we want to thank you all for attending, and hope to see you soon.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks all. Cheers.